This is the Vorsa. It's a brand new model from Ride1Up, and it's got some serious versatility as part of its up-and-coming SUV e-bike styling. It's a bike that's attempting to be your daily commuter, your tool for the weekend excursions to the woods or to the beach. It's even trying to rival long-tail cargo bikes with a ridiculously high payload capacity and the accessories you need to support tons of gear. So, is this Swiss Army knife worth its price tag? Let's ride around and find out. Hey guys, this is Electric Bike Report. I'm Griffin, and today we'll be talking about the Vorsa. If you're new here, we're known for our detailed reviews and our weekly show going over e-bike news and exploring all the fun corners of the electric bike world. Hit subscribe to stay in the loop on all of our content. So let's kick things off with some of the highlights from testing the Vorsa. This bike is following a lot of industry trends that we're seeing emerge and making models more versatile, but it's finding ways to go a step beyond and executing them really well and doing the usual Ride1Up thing of keeping prices lower than you'd expect. Now, versatility starts with the motor. This is one of Ride1Up's most powerful motors to date with 750 watts of nominal power and a whopping 95 Newton meters of torque. And just as a preview to what is to come in our testing, it set some new high marks for its class. But what's great about it is in its programming. Ride1Up's latest color display has easy to use settings that allow you to tailor the amperage, torque, and the motor sensor for engagement. Now, either sensor has some custom Ride1Up tuning to it, so you can pick the cadence-based system for easier power or use the IntuiDrive torque sensor for smoother engagement. Now, having these options help you find your desired speeds, how challenging you want hills or gear hauling to be, and just general comfort on the bike. This is a bike that's really looking to compete on price. Its MSRP is at $1,595, which is usually the starting point where quality commuters are selling for, but there are uncommon things found here we don't expect to see. For one, some nicer tires with the hybrid Schwalbe Smart Sams. They fit the theme as they do well splitting road and off-road duties. I thought they rode well in either scenario. But Ride1Up also has a welded-on section of the frame that connects with a Connect Plus rear rack, which works with many different accessories and gets them all on and off relatively quickly. The rack has a high 150-pound weight limit, and with spots for pegs, you can actually add a passenger package to bring along an adult, but where it really ups the ante is with a rack extender that brings the total rear payload capacity to 330 pounds. That holds some bike packing potential where you can take that much gear with you. And finally, just to reinforce the value point, we're seeing trends emerge in bikes that we've reviewed a lot of lately, like the ability to program the motor yourself, and newer GPS tracking security features, which is included here on the Vorsa with the FindMy integration. But the combo of performance we got out of this thing, combined with a massive 440 pounds of total payload, and not just feeling out of place as a commuter or light-duty trail bike and cargo bike, just makes the price feel exceptionally well valued. It's a couple $100 less than some other comps, and those comps just don't go as far with the cargo capabilities. All right, now let's take a look at the rest of the components. We talked a bit about the motor, but it's fed off of a removable 720 watt-hour battery, and the bike has both UL 2271 and 2849 certifications. Now the bike's aluminum frame comes in 3 different colors and 2 sizing options, the High Step XR that we have here, or a step-through model where sizing is intended more for shorter riders. Across the 2 options, it fits riders from 5'2" up to 6'4", and the bike has a really high payload capacity of 440 pounds. The Schwalbe Smart Sam tires are 27.5 by 2.6 inches, and the brake system is a Star Union 2-piston hydraulic model with a 180mm rotor on the front and a 203mm rotor on the back. We'll talk a little bit more about this unique rotor choice in our brake test. Now you get some suspension as well with the X-Show 100mm spring fork complete with lockout, and the drivetrain is an 8-speed Shimano with 42-tooth chainring and an 11 to 32-tooth cassette in the back. There is a nice Velo plush saddle to cozy up to, and a kind of a more narrow handlebar. It's 680mm wide, has 35mm of rise, and a 15-degree sweep, all on an adjustable stem for dialing in your reach. There are silicone ergonomic grips on either side of the handlebar, but over here on the right, you have your rapid-fire trigger shifters, and then over on the left is the thumb throttle and color display. Now this display has tons of customization that we'll dive into more in our ride quality section. The bike includes alloy fenders, including a brake light integrated into the rear one, and a 100 lux front headlight, and bosses for water bottle cages. Now, that's all that it comes with, but now let's take a look at how it did in our testing. We've typically seen good results from Star Union brakes in the past on other bikes, but this setup was a first and I was curious to see how it would go. To test out the braking capabilities of the Vorsa, I pedaled it up to 20 miles per hour, hit the brakes, and measured the distance it took to stop. I did that 3 total times to get an average, and I came out with a result of 22 feet and 6 inches. That's close to our average score for other commuters, which is at 22 feet. Overall, that's stopping well within what we feel is safe and normal parameters. But if you're like me and wondering what's up with the larger rotor on the back and not the front, well, here's my theory. When it comes to stopping the bike, 70% of braking force is handled by the front brake and 30% by the rear one. That's why typically if you're mixing rotor sizes, you'll find the larger one up front to boost stopping power. However, if you're constantly needing to just slow the bike down when going downhill, slow but not stop it, then a larger rotor behind you makes sense to ensure you don't overheat it, and that way you're not pulling the front brake, which could make you feel like you're gonna go over the bars. Now, given that Ride1Up has some seriously high weight capacities for the rear rack, I can see some sense in utilizing the rear brake more often. It's got a payload capacity to rival most long-tail cargo bikes, but where most of those are on 20-inch tires with a lower center of gravity, some beefed up rear braking might offset any unbalanced feelings by using it more here on this bike when hauling cargo. And at any rate, like I said, the end result was a solid one, and overall I think the brake system has pretty good value. The goal of our speed test is to see how fast the bike rides in each of its PAS levels for both a Class 2 setting and Class 3 if it's got it. But the Vorsa also has torque or cadence sensor riding options, so I ended up doing 4 total tests. Now for the torque sensor, I did that in its settings as it shipped, and then I did some custom tuning on the cadence sensor that I'll explain later on. Okay, so starting things off, just establishing the baseline. The Vorsa actually rolls pretty well. I'm going about 9 miles per hour just here in 4th gear. Kind of climbing up to 10. It moves easily, but let's go ahead and kick the motor on. So this is our Class 2 test with the torque sensor. I should be able to see it, but it actually does give you a wattage readout. Kind of shows you how much power the motor's putting forth. Even they have this little bar readout kind of on a curved scale there, moves up. As you can see, I'm doing about 12 miles per hour. Feels pretty good there. Let's go ahead and bump it up into tour mode. The watt readout just about instantly doubles there, and you kind of feel that reflective in the motor. It gives you a good little nudge forward. Pretty good and smooth engagement overall, I'd say, though a little bit of noise to the motor. Noticeable. It's not on the egregious side, but yeah, it's there. It's going about 14 and a half miles per hour. Move things into sport mode. It picks up nicely. You can see the watts climbing higher, about probably 300 watts there, going about 17 miles per hour. Move things over in turbo. Then 7th gear, again, trying to keep consistent pressure, but you gotta increase your cadence a little bit as things get going faster. You're doing 19 miles per hour in turbo. And we'll finish things off with boost. See how it does traveling that 20 mile per hour line. Morning. Yeah, has no problem getting up to 20.3 miles per hour. We put it in 8th and final gear. As you can see, it doesn't have a hard stop at that Class 2 20 mile per hour limit. It just kind of helps keep you right around that ballpark though. Peaking out about 20.6, but let's see how it does now on the Class 3 setting side of things. Alright, so now we're on Class 3 torque sensor settings. We're going to see what changes up with that higher 28 mile per hour speed limit now in play. So here again in eco mode, going about 13 miles per hour. Maybe move up to 5th gear, see what that changes. Giving me a good 150 watts or so. Starting to back down a little bit so you can tell it's not wanting to go too much faster, but up to 14.4 miles per hour. We'll switch over to tour. Same as before, noticeable nudge forward, a little bit easier to accelerate as soon as you change that level, but very manageable, very smooth engagement, up to about 16 and a half miles per hour here in tour. Still climbing a little bit, we'll give it a second. Yeah, about 17.2 miles per hour. Bump it up one more time into sport. A little bit more of a noticeable jump here, just kind of with how it's programmed and set up. But climbing to a little over 20 miles per hour. Kind of got to let it do its thing for a minute, see where we end up, before we get to this turn that's up ahead. But you're settling around 21 miles per hour, maybe climbing to 22, move through gearing in 7th gear, one more gear to go. So I'll slow down a little bit into this corner, and then change it up, see what turbo does on the other side. I'll give it just a second so I can pass this person with her dog. On your left. Thank you. All right, now we'll apply some proper amount of pressure. And as you can see, like, it really just picks up going 24 miles per hour. I don't feel like the motor is significantly louder here than it was like around PAS2, or like 24 and a half. Kind of keeps going and climbing. We'll finish things off in boost. And then, yeah, this is effortless power right here. Yeah, I've already hit 28. Similar as class 2, it seems to, it's not cutting out or anything like that, but it seems to help settle around that 28 miles per hour mark. But yeah, overall, really good, fun ride. All right, so we've changed things up. Now we're over on the cadence sensor side of things. Now I have done some manual programming for the power levels. I'll explain a little bit more back in studio. But right here, I actually kind of like this setup. So eco mode going about 14 miles per hour. And I'm basically able to ghost pedal. The bike does a good job with its motor, just kind of scooting you right along. Now if I put that up into tour mode, it's gonna be going here a little bit faster, about 16 and a half miles per hour. On sport mode, and that's gonna push me right up to about 19 miles per hour. You know, even on the cadence sensor side of things, like it's got a little, it's more on the aggressive side of the acceleration, I would say. You know, those watts come pretty quickly, but not so badly that it kind of bucks you off or anything like that. It feels like it's within control, but as you can see, we're hitting 20 miles per hour. So we move over into turbo mode and over into boost mode. You know, it's still going to be sticking between 20 and 21 miles per hour, just respecting the programming of class 2 settings. But yeah, let's go ahead and switch things over to class 3 mode and see what it does there. All right, so now we're on the class 3 cadence sensor test. This is starting out similar to how things were on class 2 with how I've got it set up. Very nice, you know, acceleration, just kind of hanging out around 14 or so miles per hour. I'm in 5th gear, but the bike is doing the lion's share of the work. So up to about 15 miles per hour. Let's move it over into tour mode. So again, giving me a little bit more wattage here. Able to get going upwards of about 17 miles per hour. So just climbing up to 18, 18.4. Now I've got it over in sport mode. Really good bit of acceleration here. It's climbing nicely. I really like this setting here in class 3, up to about 23.4 miles per hour. Into the turn. Put it into turbo on the other side. So I'm in my 8th and final gear, so I am pushing a little bit, but still the bike doing the heavy lifting. I'm about 26 miles per hour. And we'll finish things off in boost mode. And we're cranking out some serious watts here. Display showing just under 1200 as we hit that 28.5 miles per hour. See, it still keeps going. Yeah, pushes up a little closer to 29 miles per hour on cadence than it did in torque, but still overall, really nice ride experience. Let's talk a little bit more about that after we do the throttle test. The 0 to 20 throttle test. On your mark, get set, go. Got really good acceleration. It just kind of jumps right up to that peak wattage when you slam the throttle down, but it's kind of pacing itself a little bit. Drop down a bit as we approach that 20 mile per hour mark, and 20. There it is. Let's recap the torque sensor results first. The bike rolls for me at about 10.1 miles per hour without any motor help and just a casual effort. On the class 2 test, the bike went to 12.2 miles per hour in eco, 14.4 in tour, 17 in sport, 19.2 in turbo, then finally 20.5 miles per hour in boost. And then on class 3 settings, the bike went to 14.4 miles per hour in eco, 17 in tour, 21.9 in sport, 24.1 in turbo, then finally 28 miles per hour in boost. So I gotta say, right out of the box, the Vorsa's torque sensor settings felt fantastic. It delivers all of the hallmarks of a great ride: natural engagement, smooth yet responsive acceleration, and the ability to hit and maintain higher speeds with ease. Also, some kudos for getting the gear ratio right on this, as there really isn't much ghost pedaling either. Now, I am consistently impressed with how far torque sensors have helped with hub motors feeling more natural, and Ride1Up's Intuidrive system is impressive and really helping hub motors narrow the gap on mid-drives where the feel department is concerned. Now for the cadence sensor result and how I tuned them. On the Class 2 test, the bike went to 14.2 miles per hour in Eco, 16.7 in Tour, 20.1 in Sport, and both turbo and boost were also right there at 20 miles per hour. In Class 3, the bike went to 14.4 miles per hour in Eco, 18.2 in Tour, 23.4 in Sport, 26.2 in Turbo, and finally 28.6 in Boost. Overall, I felt like the cadence sensor was pretty peppy. It quickly ramps up the watts, but the system is nice as there isn't a set miles per hour where it cuts off either, which can make the ride feel a little jerky. Overall, I like the adjustment that you can do to the motor. It lets you pick the amp output, the torque ratio of each level, which means you can really dictate your speeds and how hard the motor will push on hills. I did find that the default settings applied really well to the torque sensor, but when you switch that to the cadence sensor, it doesn't actually change the outputs. And those outputs start to feel more aggressive when the system isn't matching your effort level like it does on a torque sensor. So I do advise people to tone that down, as the amps start at 50% in Eco, then go all the way to 100% for both turbo and boost. Now for me, I found putting the amps output closer to what the torque percentages were set at really made things feel nice. So I started things at 15% in Eco and spaced things out about 15 to 20% apart. Now this gave me practical differences with a low, medium, and high speed option, while turbo and boost I reserved for larger hills. Now it's one area for improvement I think that the Vorsa has. It would be nice to have preset profiles that when you switch torque and cadence, you don't have to go adjust amp and torque each time too, or if you want a power and eco profile on just one sensor, you could quickly toggle between those. Now for what it's worth, I think 98% or maybe more of people out there will set all of this up just one time and then feel happy with how it rides and never really look to change it again. Just make sure that you do tune it to your personal sweet spot and it will engage nicely. So we run 2 different range tests to see how far the bike can go on a single charge. We do one test in the highest power and one in its lowest. Now for the Vorsa, we kept its standard settings and did our testing with the torque sensor and set to Class 2 speeds like we do with other bikes for comparison purposes. And the Vorsa did really well and frankly exceeded expectations, reaching 42.5 miles on max power and 92.4 miles on minimum power. This was one of the most efficient range tests we have seen from a Ride1Up bike to date. And when stacked against other commuter e-bikes with hub motors, the Vorsa ranks among the top all-time performers in watts per mile efficiency, which you can think of like miles per gallon for a car. So how did it pull that off? The torque sensor definitely helped. In general, torque sensors are more efficient because they adjust power output to match the rider's effort, rather than just delivering a set amount of power like cadence sensors do. The tires also played a role. Initially, I thought the knobby tread of the Schwalbe Smart Sam tires might slow it down, but they're actually optimized for mixed road and dirt performance. The denser center lugs improve rolling efficiency on pavement, while the outer blocks provide the grip that you want in the dirt. Overall, the Vorsa moves efficiently, making it easy to get up to speed, and then it doesn't require a ton of power to hold that speed once you're there, though the power definitely still kicks on if you're climbing elevation on hills. However, let's temper expectations just a bit. If you crank it up to Class 3 speeds or switch to the cadence sensor, expect results to land closer to Ride1Up's official range estimate of 30 to 50 miles. Still, we tested the Vorsa under the same conditions as other e-bikes, and compared to its peers, it outperformed most of them. Simply put, we were more than happy with the mileage that it achieved. Our hill test takes place at the infamous Hellhole Trail. The path here is a paved 1/3 of a mile climb that has an average grade of 12%. Now we do 2 tests, one with just throttle power and once again when pedaling in the max assistance. Now we did up the torque from its pre-programmed 85% to the full 100 here. Just like with the brake test, this has a dedicated tester, Justin, for consistency. I'll send it over to him to show you how the Vorsa did.
We are out on Hellhole doing the Ride1Up Vorsa throttle test. And so far it's doing fairly well. So in this first section, we're at about 13.9. 13.6. It felt pretty peppy. I am in boost, Class 2. It's going down to 11.6. 11.4, 11.2, 10.6. So it looks like it's going to bottom out on that first steep section at about 10.5 miles per hour. Motor, I'd say, is a little quieter than I expected. I'll let you listen to it here. So yeah, it's on the quieter side of things. It feels nice and smooth, at least on throttle. I think overall is going to be a pretty good score here. Might have some people in my way up here. Oh, excuse me, bud. Let's see if I can just slow down a little bit. I'm on your left here. Thank you. Thank you. So yeah, I might have added a half a second slowing down, but overall I think it's going to be a pretty darn good score on the Vorsa with the throttle test. So we'll turn around and do the pedal and see how it does. Okay, we're back at it on the Ride1Up Vorsa, now doing the pedal test. I'm in boost mode. We did adjust the torque all the way up. It's kind of cool, you can play around with that. And I'm in 6th gear and this is kind of flying up here. So I'm about 16 miles an hour. I'm not having to pedal much at all. We do have this on torque sensor mode. 14.6, it's kind of where that bottomed out. 14.4. Motor might be a tad louder now that I'm pedaling, but not much. I'll let you listen here. So yeah, held strong through there, 14.7 miles per hour. I've not had to shift out of 6th gear, and it feels nice and responsive and natural, but definitely powerful. So I think we're gonna have some pretty good results. We'll go check that at the tape and see how this compares, but so far, very strong up that hill.
So on the hill test using just the throttle, the Vorsa reached the top in 1 minute and 19 seconds, which is good for a 13.7 mile per hour average. Then on the pedal test, it had a blazing 1 minute and 4 second time with a 16.9 mile per hour average. And at the time of its testing, those results put it in 3rd place for throttle only and 1st place amongst all commuter e-bikes that we've ever tested. Wow. Okay, so results in standard settings would be a few seconds slower. Again, we did up the torque from its pre-programmed limit, but for my personal testing, I don't think it would be a whole lot slower. Now the advantage here is the AKM motor. Many bikes have 750 watts, but SUV or commuters are typically packing 60 to 80 Newton meters of torque, and not the 95 that the Vorsa has. It does make sense though. Again, this bike wears many hats, and if one of those is a cargo bike, then you need that extra torque when loaded up. The bottom line, if you hate hills, no problem. Whether you throttle or pedal, with or without cargo, the Vorsa takes them on with ease. All right, time for one last ride to talk about all the bike's ride quality and versatility. So the whole concept of this, the Ride1Up Vorsa or an SUV style of e-bike is a really good design, because I think, America kind of has like a love affair with SUVs, and we just like that they can do a little bit of everything. They're a little bit bigger, a little bit roomier, more comfortable. They can carry a bunch of stuff inside, but they've just got a lot of luxuries that you can, enjoy mostly on the road, with like the knowledge that you can go a little bit off-road and not have to worry too much about it. And that same mentality is kind of coming here to, the SUV style of e-bike. It just feels like there's a lot you can do with it, and I think the execution on Ride1Up's behalf is just really, really solid all around, because it does feel practical for doing just about anything. I think this is a good step. It's an evolution kind of beyond there on your left. It's kind of the next step in evolution beyond the Ride1Up Tourist, which are, a bike that we really liked a lot. But this just feels like a little bit more heavy duty, a little bit more optionality, especially a lot of things that are going on. Let's kind of break everything down for you. So, this is going to fit riders from, I believe it's 5'4" up to 6'4", according to Ride1Up. I think there's some validity to that. You're getting 2 different frames here, a high step or a step through, so a little bit limited when it comes to sizing options. However, in the past I've actually been a little bit on the critical side, feeling that Ride1Up overestimates how, tall riders can be on this bike on your left, while fitting comfortably. But I actually do think that there is really good spacing here. I'm 6'1", 32-inch inseam. I've got all the leg extension I need, and of course with this adjustable stem here, I can kind of set up the handlebar how I need in terms of the reach, or if I want the position to be a little bit more forward like I have it now, or I could raise it up and get a little bit more straight backed approach, a little bit more easier and relaxed if I wanted to. So again, a lot to appreciate just in terms of the sizing, but again, the utility is just really nice. Some of that is due, of course, to the tires and forks. So the tires, Schwalbe Smart Sam, 27.5 by 2.6 inches. It's actually a really nice tire. It's Schwalbe's, hybrid tire. This is exactly the type of tire you want on this bike. Personally, I think Schwalbe's a little bit better, of a brand, but I'm really impressed with what they did here. This tire rolls really, really well on pavement. At first look with the knobbies, thought it'd be, kind of inefficient, kind of sluggish, but that's not really been the case. But it does have just enough, grip into the shoulders that, yeah, if you kind of go off and venture into the dirt a little bit, you feel like you're gonna have all the traction you need. But again, it's actually got a nice design down the center where it holds speed really well because it's a little bit denser on that central tread pattern there. So really nice. And then of course you do have the X-Show 100mm fork up front. Now it's more on the entry level side, but I'm still pretty impressed with it. It's entry level, but it's not cheap necessarily either. There's a lot of unbranded no-name forks that, trust me, I bottom out really easily, but I was actually able to get the preload adjustment where I needed on this one. So, I hit bumps and I don't bottom out, which is really all I'm kind of looking for something on-road. And then when it goes off-roading, it still does a pretty solid and notable job. Obviously, don't put it anywhere too intense or too extreme. I'm not saying this is a mountain bike by any stretch, but again, it's just a little bit more capable and it does allow you to do some off-roading. It is something you can cut across some hard-packed dirt, some lighter gravel areas, and not have to think twice. Now, in terms of the motor engagement, we talked a lot about it at this point. Now, for me, I think the torque sensor feels fantastic. It just feels very powerful. It feels very intuitive. You push a little harder, you go a little faster. Those higher levels, of course, kind of as we saw in the hill test, I mean, you can absolutely dominate on this thing and make things easy, but with each passing year, I appreciate natural engagement more, so I really like the torque sensor. The cadence sensor is pretty good, a little bit more on the aggressive side, so you really have to play with the tuning to get it into a sweet spot if you want a more mellow ride, but still, that's a cadence sensor that has come a long way from where the industry was, 3, 4, 5 years ago, and still a pretty good, solid all-around job. So there's a lot quality-wise that I think Ride1Up has done really well, but let's also not underestimate the other part of this SUV multi-purpose bike, which is its cargo carrying capabilities. And let's talk about that a little more back in the studio.
What I find most impressive about the cargo side of things is how it goes further than most. With the rack extension, you could do some touring and bike packing on this thing. I like that they've got a lot of accessories for it too, so that you can take passengers, a kid, or some gear, and a combination of those things. Ride1Up mentioned that the rack extension here is sort of the 1.0 version, and they're in development for a solid one-piece system down the line that would be more robust and make it possible to carry 2 kids even, which is just really impressive. All right, let's take a closer look at the display and some of the advanced settings that you get here on the Vorsa. So nice wide display, I believe it's 2.2 inches color display, really easy to see. You have things like your time, your percentage battery level. Here in the middle is of course your speedometer. It shows you the watts up top, and you also will have that represented in a power meter bar that will go up as you're increasing the watts you're outputting, and as well as one over on the right side for speed. This bottom button right here is your menu button. We'll go through some like trip distance, your average speed that you're going, as well as kind of break down some of the different riding modes there. But what gets really impressive is when you hold down the menu button, and this is where you get into the advanced settings where you can customize a lot of different things on the bike. It can be small and basic things like choosing your unit if you want kilometers or miles per hour. You can set the time, the backlight if you want that brighter or more dim. Auto sleep function for how long the bike will stay on until you haven't used it and turn itself off. A password, so if you want a little bit of extra security, you can set a 4-digit password to make sure the bike can't be used without inputting that. And then here's where things get really fun in the torque ratio and amp output. So for all of these, 5 different power levels, it's something you can dictate for both torque and amperage. It's really nice overall because you can go through and set those and slide them one at a time, by 1% at a time, move it through to really just help you set up and find the sweet spot that rides nicely for you. And moving down, riding mode here, class 1, 2, or 3. And then there is an off-road mode. We haven't gotten the unlock code for this yet from Ride1Up, so we'll update the written review once we have a few more details on that. If I were to guess, I'd say it probably takes the top off the 28 mile per hour speed limit of class 3 riding, But again, we'll update the written review once we know more. Ebike info just shows you kind of like the display and controller serial numbers. And then in the advanced settings is where you can pick the sensor mode. So cadence or torque here, pick whichever one you prefer, and then you're off and riding, which is really nice. So the final thing I wanted to show you on here, Ride1Up also has a little bit of extra security. So if you hold down the up and the menu button for 5 seconds, you'll see this little indicator pop up. So that right there, it's Apple's FindMy system. So if you have Apple devices, you're able to then pair that. So if someone does run off with your bike, but they're within range of Bluetooth, it will give you the GPS location of your bike, helping you track it down and get your bike back. The Vorsa was a pretty impressive bike to test out. The test results scored in a range from solid to stellar with seriously surprising range and powerful hill climbing capabilities. The bike handles really well. It's nimble and rides nicely on road or off-roading across hard-packed dirt or even a bit of sand. And while versatility is something a lot of bikes talk up, no other SUV bike that I know of has such a high carrying capacity. This thing is a true hybrid commuter, explorer, and utility ride, and it can be set up however you like with optionality extending to the motor programming. It's a rare combination of performance, value, and versatility. So if the Vorsa appeals to you, I would recommend it. That'll do it for this review. Thank you so much for watching, and make sure to like, subscribe, and you can check out current pricing from the links down below. I'm Griffin with Electric Bike Report. I'll see you on the next review.